I was always amazed that essentially it came down to these little glass bottles, which are a bunch of styrene and gasoline shoved inside of there, that beat back this giant force of highly trained police officers and Berkuts. So I guess it's kind of going into that narrative of the David versus Goliath. I didn't necessarily want it to say that, but in a way, if we remove the context of the people, we have sort of the object that's left to fight with.
Did you see them as anthropomorphic? I mean, I sure do.
Well, that's what, yeah, it was stunning. Like, actually, when I started collecting them, you know, that one there with the, it looks like a little wig with a person, and all of them were had their own identity. I was talking about the orphans and these young kids that come from little tiny poor villages, but who become these bottles and launch themselves at the police. You know, you take this utter worthless existence that they perceive they have, and suddenly you can fight back against this giant force with just this thing. So in a way, I saw all these little bottles as mimicry, I guess, of the larger protesters at large. Yeah.
Your images of the different bottles, they're very artistic. So they're, of course, documenting the weapons, the improvised weapons of war, but they're also very kind of whimsical in themselves. And I think, yeah, you can go anthropomorphic there as well. But also they are different. They're different bottles. They're, you know, many of them are beer bottles, and you can kind of have this idea of the civilian life that has been disrupted by this regime, and where people went from drinking beer and tossing their bottles aside to saving them and making weapons out of them. So they invite a story, and I guess, you know, the less context you have for such an image, the more a viewer can bring to that.
You know, it definitely did represent a shift in tactics among the protesters, and you know, it's also interesting. It invokes revolutions and resistance movements, you know, that we've all seen throughout history. I mean, this is usually the first thing that comes out because the materials are so widely available. So it's a resistance image and a protest image, and it does kind of play the whole David versus Goliath type situation.
There's a transition that's happened, is that they finally have ripped their faces off and are proud of their of who they are, that they stood there, that they fought there, as opposed to before there was always a little bit of a reticence. That's why they were, you know, obviously worried with the government forces to me, but I really saw it as a symbolic movement to finally say, I'm not scared of you anymore, I'm taking my mask off. You shoot my friend in the head, I'm going to stand beside him and show you who I am.
I found this to be the most haunting photograph, because it's a portrait that, yes, gives us a very individualized insight into the identity of a protester, and we do have this sort of stereotype of protesters as very young men. However, aside from the helmet on his head that signifies his status as a protester, that's actually been kind of loosened up, right? He's not strapped into it. He is a young man who is just like any of our college freshmen. He's listening to music, obviously, in his time off. He's smoking a cigarette. So there's a kind of tranquility about this image, but also I don't know, soulfulness. He is looking straight at the camera. He's not cocky. I didn't read it as being sort of in your face. He's relaxed. His posture is relaxed. He's confronting the camera with his gaze. And of course, there's a certain kind of bad boy eroticism about it. But I think that what confronts us is his sort of irreducible humanity.